Good morning. Sorry to keep you waiting. I guess you're on for a few minutes here. Just getting myself together. Hope you're doing well this morning. Hope you got your coffee. Nice rainy day outside. We haven't had too much rain, have we? It's been a sunny month of July and now into August. I guess we're going to have more rain and I have to get used to it, but it's a little cooler. Good morning. Good morning. And I think too the cooler weather makes for nice sleeping. We had the windows wide open yesterday and last night that is, and it just seemed to be nice to have the fresh air. But then the only problem is you start hearing sounds that you don't usually hear when your windows are closed. We heard a baby crying throughout the night and some other noises outside, and it's just like, okay, we have to get used to the new noises in sleeping. Anyhow, great to be with you this morning. And let's get into our study this morning. If you have your Bibles, we'll be looking at 2 verses. Actually, it's a series of 5 points, if you will, that we'll look at 2 today and 3 on Thursday. And it's about morality. And it's not an easy topic to deal with, so I'll do my best today to summarize it quickly. And it's in Ephesians 5 and verses 3 and 4. And then after that, we'll look at verses 5, 6, or 7 on Thursday. So let me read it to you this morning. It says in verse 3, "But among you, there must not be even a hint of sexual immorality or any kind of impurity or of greed, because these are improper for God's holy people. Nor should there be obscenity, foolish talk, or coarse joking, which are out of place, but rather thanksgiving." One of the burning issues today, obviously, is sexual immorality. And we know that it is a problem because even Jesus brought it up when he was on earth, stating that for adultery, for fornication, that for him it was like, if your hand is causing you a problem, cut it off. He was quite strict about some of these urges and desires that we have. And Paul is again coming back with the same idea, stating basically that God's intention for the sexual relationship was basically within marriage, and where you're in complete faithfulness to a partner, and that if you're not in that relationship, sex has a way of being distorted in a way that is not according to God's plan. So again, we read these verses and we come through with these thoughts. But among you, there must not be even a hint of sexual immorality, sexual looseness, immorality. It's a morality that is not acceptable to God. Any kind of impurity. Again, the idea of that which is obscene, that which is unclean, all impurity, or of greed. And the word greed here is not relating to money, it's relating to sex. And it's talking about passions, all greed for passion or for lust. The whole topic here is relating to that. And in the Bible, there is no prohibition about talking about sexual relationships. The Bible never condemns sex because it was God's intention. He made it good. He made it right. But sex can be, there can be a distortion, and that we are to be careful of. The sexual powers, God, he gave them, and God is the author of our sex. He engineered it, he designed it, and our sexual drives is a very powerful drive in our lives, and he must have a purpose for it if he gave us those desires to start with. And so the Bible never treats sex as deplorable or shameful, and among all the religions of the world, Christianity approves the body. It says we are our bodies, even the temple of the Spirit. And so our body, our sexual organs, there's nothing shameful about that. And the relationship, sexual relationships in marriage is beautiful. It's wholesome. It's God approved. So the Bible is clear, though, that when you start venturing in sexual relationships outside of marriage, it's harmful to our basic humanity. And it keeps us from that which would be to enjoy the best. It can be dangerous for us. And let's put some context to this, if you will. In the city of Ephesus, where Paul is writing this chapter, there was a temple to a pagan goddess, the worship of whom was made possible by multitude of priests and priestesses who gave their bodies to whoever would pay a price as an act of worship. And the whole city accepted sexual intercourse as an act of worship. It regarded it as normal and proper, even religious, and a sign of dedication. And this was going on in the city of Ephesus, and people were very tolerant towards this. And yet now these Christians are coming to Christ and living in these surroundings. And Paul is trying to give them some direction as to how to be a Christian and to live for God amidst the immorality that's surrounding them. And so he says here, among you, there must not be even the hint of sexual immorality. He's saying basically, be careful in your activities. It's not fitting among saints. It's not wholesome. It's not healthy, if you will. It's improper even to do so. It goes verse 4, nor should there be obscenity, foolish talk, or coarse joking, which is out of place, but rather thanksgiving. He was saying this was the talk of the town. People would be talking about their recent activities at the temple, and worshiping the gods, goddess of Diana, I think it's called, in Ephesus. Understand that sexual relationships are natural and beautiful. These desires and urges in their place are acceptable and fine. But we are receiving propaganda. There's a constant barrage of sexual innuendos on TV, in literature, in talk shows, which somehow makes you feel that if you're not practicing this, there's something wrong with you. And the idea of sex that is just rampant and open to any expression is a lie. It's a natural urge. It's related to our physical body. And but all of our urges all have restraints. When you talk about hunger, if you overfeed yourself, you're not controlling yourself for your hunger, you have a problem. For thirst, if you drink too much, you're going to be bloated. Or if you drink too much of an alcohol, you're going to kill your liver. To urinate, to sleep, any other physical urge. All of these physical urges that we have require regulation and control. And they're not to be indulged in at any time, at any place. We don't just, take our food and throw it in our mouth and start to eat it like that, like, cavemen. There's a way of eating. There's a proper way of expressing that urge. When we sleep, we just don't sleep anywhere. We go to our room, we put on our pajamas, whatever, but you just don't lie down in the middle of whatever and just sleep. Although maybe some of you feel like that. I'm feeling a little more like I need sleep sometimes at earlier in the evening. And we don't urinate in public. We even train our cats and our dogs to make sure they go, in a certain place. And because we figured, well, yeah, it's not nice that we let our dogs poo on someone's lawn in front of our house. So just to say that urges, desires that seem natural still require regulation and restraint. And the intended regulation of sex is supposed to be marriage. And sex is, though, much more complicated than many of our other natural urges. It requires a partner, which no other urge does. I mean, you don't have to have somebody with you when you go into the bathroom. You don't have to have somebody sit and hold your hand as you're eating. But sex usually involves another person. And the one thing to understand is that it's not only a physical union, it's a psychological union as well. And it's this psychological union that makes it different than all the other urges that we have. When you talk to counselors or talk about couples and issues they might have in their relationship, a lot of them, it's related to their physical sexual union. And but the problem is that it's not good sex makes a good marriage, but a good marriage and a good communication and a good relationship and good character makes a good sex. It's the reverse. Who we are is more important than just what we do with ourselves. And so it's complicated. The idea of the total union between two beings in a marriage is not that easy to do. But it's much more psychological than physical. And today we've made it into much more physical, saying, well, it's just, like animals. We'll just do what we feel is important and we'll just listen to our urges. But it creates such brokenness and heartache, because maybe the first times there would be excitement and a sense of release and so on. But with time, the psychological, the relationship wants to come in, but you put the cart before the horse, and it creates all kinds of hurts because you haven't based it on love, you've based it on lust. C.S. Lewis said this. I thought it was a very good quote. Let me read it to you, okay? The monstrosity of sexual intercourse outside of marriage is that those who indulge in it, trying to isolate one kind of union, the physical, from all other kinds of union, which were intended to go along with it, make up the total union. The Christian attitude does not mean that there is anything wrong about sexual pleasure any more than about the pleasure of eating. It means that you must not isolate that pleasure to try to get it itself any more than you ought to try to get pleasure of taste without swallowing and digesting by chewing things and spitting them out again. What he's saying here is that our sexual instincts can be distorted and inflamed, even for the best of people, because in the age we live in and the generation of sexual distortion that's surrounding us, we can treat it in a way that is not respectful, and it does harm to our psychological makeup and our sense of self-esteem and self-worth, because we are debased and devalued in the way we express this desire that is God-given. Now, it's interesting. When you connect verse 2 with verse 3, you understand the context of why Paul is saying what he's saying. So let me read to you verse 2. We saw it last week. It says, and live a life of love, just as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us as a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. So here we're saying be imitators of God, dearly loved children. He's talking about true love. Christ loved us, gave himself up for us as a fragrant offering and a sacrifice to God. And then he's talking about that, but then he comes and he says, but, in verse 3, but among you, in other words, don't fall into the trap of this false love, these lies that are in the society that surround you. Here's the perfect love of Christ. And now, but among you, there must not be even a hint of sexual immorality, because it should be based upon real love, Christ-like love in our lives. And sexual looseness is a violation of love at the basis of it. And sex outside of marriage is incomplete. It is unfulfilling, and it is injurious many times. And you can't just combine the two. If a boy tells a girl, and they're not married, and he says, I love you, does he really love her? If he really loved her, then he'd be willing to restrain himself and to say, I'll respect you before I love you. And he loves himself often. When we say I love you, it's not so much I love you, it's I want you, I need you, I lust after you. And it's to satisfy his own desires. And these desires that I say are not wrong, but not in the right setting, they become harmful for us. And you probably have experienced that, where there was an emptiness and a shamefulness that comes over you if things were done in a way which weren't according to God's plan. True love is concerned about another's welfare and desires no harm in any way to another individual. And so this idea that we have to experiment with sex before marriage to see if we're compatible, for instance, it's a lie. The idea that we have to try to test. Someone has said this, I thought it was a great saying. It says, trying to see if you're compatible with another person by having sex with them before you get married is like trying to test a parachute by jumping off a 30-foot building. You're not going to have the parachute open in time by the time you hit the ground. Parachutes are made to be used when you're jumping out of an airplane. And so, you've got to put things and these urges in the right context, or else they will just cause you harm in your life. So again, verse 4 goes on, nor should there be any obscenity, foolish talk, or coarse joking, which is out of place. He's saying, be careful too on how you inflame these urges within you. Today, we go beyond that. We go into internet, we go into porn, we go into reading, discussions, interviews, what do you call it? Sexologist who gives all kinds of tips online. It's just, it says, be careful for what you are listening to, how you're talking, how you're thinking, what are you watching, all of those things, because that inflames things and causes problems in your life. I like what one person said is, when we indulge in this kind of talk or seeing things or the lusts of the world, through movies, through books, through online stuff, through novels that will just inflame us, creating such these love models, books sometimes can create desires that will just cause you to totally compare yourself with your partner and say, boy, if I only can have a person like I read about in this book here. When you allow the sex drive and the urges and you feed them in a way which is wrong, it's like they come out of the channel and they're kept, they got to be kept within certain restraints and bounds to be women of God. But when they break over the bounds, when in society you have desires and urges and lusts that are inflamed and beyond what they should normally be, then it's like it overflows its banks. It becomes like a flood inside of your life. And when this flood and urge of lust comes through your life, it can just wash away your home even. And so we must not just think that love is equated with sex, but true sex should be equated with love. And that's why we have Christ loved us and gave himself for us. And that's why it says that a man is to love his wife as Christ loved the church and give his life for her. This is the basis where sex can flourish, when we have true commitment and love for the other person. And that's the way God intended it. The worldly form of loving is actually lust, and therefore causes us to sin, and not only against God, but against our own bodies. If we want to be truly loving in our actions, our model is Jesus Christ. So let's love and keep our bodies in check. Oh, that's a lot to say in a short few time here. I'm sorry I went over talking here, but I've been struggling with this topic here last night, trying to figure out what am I going to say. It's not an easy topic to talk about. But I believe when you take this in context, Paul was just trying to protect the people in Ephesus because it was a sex-crazed society. And he was saying it's just going to cause harm and destruction to families and relationships. And he says, be careful. Don't walk this way. There's a better way to walk. and God has your future and your health in mind when he gives this. It's for our good, not to kill us or to kill joy. It's for our future. So the Lord bless you today. I hope that helps you a little bit in understanding this topic. And we're going to continue with 3 other reasons too that are sort of against the plan of God, and that we have to be careful on Thursday. So you read up on verses 5 and going forward, maybe right through to 13 or 14, and we'll talk about it more. Listen to it again. This is an interesting topic to discuss, and we have to talk about it openly, because it's inundated, the sexual craze surrounding us, and God has a purpose and a plan for us, and it's a good plan. So the Lord bless you. Have a great day. Good to be with you today. I look forward to seeing you on Thursday. Have your coffee and put up your feet and praise the Lord. Have a great day. Bye.